Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Pliant's webinar on House of Worship applications. This webinar will be recorded like all of the others we've done. They are available on our website, plianttechnologies.com. A couple of housekeeping notes here for you. While using the webinar, you have a control panel. That control panel has a number of options for you, including questions. Now, you can enter your question directly at the bottom. We'll do our best to answer you in real time. We may wait a bit if that section is coming up that will address your question. And we're going to do something a little bit different today. At the end, what we're going to attempt to do is open up microphones for people to be able to ask questions live. One of the reasons we're doing that is we have a special guest with us today, David Banks, who's the technical manager, excuse me, for the Grace Church in St. Louis, is that? Just making sure.
Just outside of St. Louis. Yep.
St. Louis. And David will join us a little bit later to talk about the application that they've done because it falls right in line with the concept for CrewCom of what we do. And today we're going to try to address the House of Worship market in 3 segments and what might be proper applications for each one. Basically a small church, a medium-sized church, and a large church or house of worship, and the different solutions available for each. Obviously, physical size matters, but so does location, how spread out a facility is, what your specific needs are. So we're going to try to show you the entire range of products that we have available from Pliant and take you through how you might use those. So on my screen, and if you're can see the same view I do, you'll see Mark Rufus in the middle. Mark is our regional sales manager who works out of Savannah, Georgia. And on the right is Art Gonzalez, who's our market development manager. And Art works out of our factory in Auburn, Alabama. I'm Gary Rosen, and I work out of my home in the Los Angeles area. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Art, and he's going to take you into our polls.
Yeah, just as Gary said, we are going to do something a little bit different towards the end. When you do want to ask a question verbally, we ask that you hit the raise your hand button, and that way we'll know whether to unmute your mic. And once again, we're going to do that towards the end. But anything in between there, to basically type in your question, and we'll answer it as we go along. Before I hand it over to Mark for product information, I'm going to start out with a quick poll. We have 2 polls. This is the first of 2. So the first one that we're going to do takes a little bit of finagling here to get it going. Just answer the poll real quickly. Are you currently using wired or wireless intercom? And in this one, you can check all that apply. So if you're using just wired, click that. If you're using wireless, how many users and so forth. If you're a dealer or a distributor, think of your specific house of worship if you're working with them or any applications like that. So go ahead, we'll give you a few seconds to finish that up, and then I'll share the responses for that. And then we should be able to move forward after that. So let's see, I'll give about 5 more seconds. And all right, looks like we've got some good responses. So I'm going to now close the poll, last chance, and then I will launch the poll. I'm sorry, launch it, but share it so you can see the results. And as you can see, looks like we've got a fair distribution of wired and wireless. So that kind of gives us a good idea of what we're going to be talking about here today. So obviously, if you're interested in wireless intercom, you're in the right place. Okay, so let me hide that, and then we will go back to the presentation. All right, and then I'm going to hand it over to Mark and let him talk specifically about product. So he's going to run through both Microcom M, Microcom XR, as well as CrewCom, and talk about product. Then we'll talk about specific applications. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Art. Good morning, everyone. We're going to dive right in here with Microcom and CrewCom, go over the entire line of products that we have to offer here. And at the beginning of our presentation, we have the Microcom series of products that we'll start with, the M and the XR. Each pack is capable of being set into different roles and modes of operation. So it could be a master, it could be a full duplex pack, listen only, or exclusive to the XR line, it can be entered into a shared mode, which I'll get into details about later on in the presentation. It's a point-to-point topology is what we're calling this. Master belt pack is established, and each of the belt packs receive their sync signal from the master, so there's no base station required in this system. You can just simply hand people belt packs appropriately set, and they'll be able to begin doing their jobs. So we have a master here, and in this particular scenario, we're showing 5 duplex users on a Microcom M system. The master determines the overall system's range, and we'll be going into some of those numbers later on. We recommend that the master pack is centrally located and stationary if possible. You know, not necessarily the leader of the pack needs to have the master pack. The spotlight operator could have the master pack, and he's going to be stationary in the center of the house, in the center of the facility, in the sanctuary, and he'll be able to send out the sync signal to all of the peripheral users. Once the master goes out of range, all the packs will lose communication capabilities. But if an individual pack goes out of range, it will only lose its capability to communicate with the rest of the group. Other than that, the rest of the group will continue communicating while that one belt pack is gone. The group function is how we separate the belt packs into user groups. So each individual group could be a particular job within your facility, a camera operator, audio person, lighting, etc. And those teams of people will not communicate between teams, but each individual on the team will be able to communicate amongst the other individuals of that same team. So we have 2 groups set here on this particular example. Group number 5 here, and they're all speaking with one another. And then there's group 25 who are speaking with one another. But group 25 and group 5 will not speak to one another. And it's a little hard to explain. I'm used to doing this in person, but that's hopefully a relatively clear way of explaining it. If you have any questions, we need to cover that again, please don't hesitate to ask. You can have a maximum of 4 co-located groups in one area. So in one RF space, in one facility, in one venue, you can have up to 4 of these groups simultaneously operating, and they will not interfere with one another. The Microcom family, M, is our entry-level economical single-channel comm system. It's simple pack-to-pack, as I described earlier on. Up to 5 users can be set in full duplex mode, and then an additional amount of unlimited listen-only users can function also in the same group. So you can have up to 5 people talking back and forth and have a bunch of listeners only on that same group. The button is latched for talking, so it's hands-free operation. Has a very clear audio performance and excellent dynamic range. This is designed for intercom applications. This isn't a repurposed product. So we really strove to make sure that you can hear clearly the other person who's speaking to you across the product, across the comm system. The M system, as well as the XR, as well as the CrewCom, all of our products are available in 900 megahertz or 2.4 gigahertz. We got a typo here, but there's a gigahertz there. Oh, I'm sorry, that is correct. 2.4 gigahertz or 2400 megahertz in the 2400 example, and a 900M, 2400 and 900M. It's encrypted, proprietary hopping sequences, simple RF setup. Once you set this thing up, it's ready to roll. There's not much to it. It's very easy to operate and get rolling on. It's very small. I'll be showing you one shortly. It's weather resistant, has a good battery life of 10 hours. It operates while charging, so you could use an external USB supply along with it to get some extended life. 2-year warranty with registration, 1 year out of the box. Register with us online. You get an additional year of coverage for free. Includes holsters, belt clips, and everything that you need to get started. There's charging options available for this unit. What's interesting about all the Microcom units is that they can charge with any off-the-shelf USB charger. So if you have an extra one for your phone, you're able to use that with your Microcom system. You can also charge it in your car if you had to. It's a very versatile system. Across the front panel of it, as we take a tour of the physical buttons of the Microcom M's belt pack, and the antennas at the top there, you've got a couple LEDs telling you where if your talk state is, charging, your power button. The mode button is where you really dig in and start setting the system up and getting all the groups assigned and the users assigned. Between that and the volume buttons, you got your headset communication there beneath the talk button. I'm sorry, next to the talk button. Your USB connection is over there on the left-hand side, and a very nice little LCD screen that'll give you a good indication of what you're dealing with there. And in a real world application, the baseline of this particular test was a person was indoors in the house to the very right of your screen. And over there where I'm trying to point for you, I hope you can see my little mouse. That's where the person was stood. And inside that house, and we managed with 900 megahertz to get 534 feet through multiple barriers, including trees, other houses, and people. In 2.4, with the same conditions, we were able to get 314 feet. And indoors, 2.4 actually blossoms and blooms a little bit more and gets better performance. The Microcom XR is our next product that is now shipping. And this is an A or B channel, a 2-channel system, as opposed to the M, which was a single channel system. So you're gaining 2 channels of capability with the XR. Again, same pack-to-pack operation philosophy that we spoke about earlier on in the presentation. This will give you up to 10 full duplex users in standard range operation. And then as you go to extended range operation, you'll get up to 5 duplex users, along with all of the listen-only folks, as well as the shared mode, which I'll talk about shortly. Unlimited shared user options, unlimited listen-only user options, latching button, or it could be momentary depending upon the way that you press it. If you press it, hold it, take your finger off, it's going to be momentary. If you press and take your finger off immediately, it latches. It gives you out of range tones, 3 beeps out, 2 beeps in. And there's a group security code that gives you the ability to join a group. So in addition to the encryption, you can lock out people with an exclusive security code that they can't just join into your group without knowing what that code is. All of the buttons on the unit can be locked except for your talk and your volume button. And this also operates in the 900 megahertz and 2 gigahertz range. This is a frequency hopping spread spectrum system, just like all of our other products are. This uses a proprietary hopping sequence. And again, very simple RF setup. There's no in-depth programming that needs to be done with this system. You just basically set your users, set your groups, and you're good to go. It's a dust-tight IP67 rated device, which basically means it's dust-tight and water-resistant for submersion up to 1 meter for 30 minutes. So this can get wet and it can take a beating. Has a very nice, comprehensive, easy-to-read OLED display. The battery is field replaceable in the Microcom XR. Has 12 hours of battery life. It requires approximately 3.5 hours of charge time on a USB charger. The optional drop-in charger pictured here will give you the ability to drop in 5 packs and charge 5 batteries simultaneously. That charging time takes a little bit longer. It's going to be overnight, but what'll be nice about this is you can put everything into the drop-in charge at the end of the day, come in the following morning, and everything's charged up and ready to go. A little tour of the XR's belt pack with the antenna, the channel button. Your LEDs are on the front, right above the OLED screen. Your mode button there, as again for programming, talk button. Headset ports on the bottom along with the USB connection. Your power buttons to the left of your mode button. You have your volume buttons there on the left-hand side. Very simple to use, very easy to use and familiar to use. Now we're going to get into a couple different modes here. We have the 10 user mode operation, which is signified by the 10U symbol there and the representation of the OLED display. Normal range with 10 users is approximately 800 feet in 900 megahertz and 450 feet in 2.4. Shared operation, unlimited amount of shared users. And what that basically gets into, without going too far down that rabbit hole, shared operation gives one of the slots in the radio scheme is shared amongst several users. And it's a push to talk, one person at a time only communication on those shared users. The other 4 users will be full duplex and have the ability to talk bidirectionally all the time. And of course, unlimited amount of listen-only users, which only listen and cannot talk at all. So you can really take and build this system out to many different applications. This is the 5-user mode, which gives you an extended range mode, about 25% over the 10U mode. We're experiencing approximately 1,000 feet with 900 megahertz. And the shared operation, again, is available with this mode. Unlimited amount of shared users, 4 duplex users, and your listen-only users are available too. So discussing who's the master pack and who are the backup packs here. We have the master here as the M, and that would be signified on the OLED screen by that, as you see in that representation. And that generates the sync beacon, as I discussed earlier on. The other packs are receiving that sync beacon, and then they synchronize to the master, but communicate via audio to each other, which is the representation of this line drawing here that we have. And those are our full duplex users that we're speaking about here. And again, full duplex 5U mode is 5, 10U mode is 10. And then if we add some listen-only users into this scenario, they would be set up in their own little world. They're set as user L, and each of those packs would be able to listen only with no ability to talk. And then once we add the shared users on top of the listen only, on top of the duplex users, we have the ability now to have one talk slot available to an unlimited amount of people who push to talk and share one slot. And with the XR, we experienced with a 10U setting in 2.4 gigahertz, 413 feet in that top picture there, same scenario, person was inside the house. And then with 900, we had 816 feet in the 10U's user mode. And now on to CrewCom. CrewCom is a proprietary network-based wireless intercom system that starts with the control unit. The control unit establishes the network, the backbone, the infrastructure of the system, and it communicates to all of the other devices on the network. There's 2 models of this unit available. The faceplate is identical except for the silk screening of the model number on the front of it. In this particular case, we have a 2.2 shown here, a CCU 2x2. And what that basically means is it's the amount of inputs on the back of the unit. We have the middle picture there is a 2x2's rear, which is the amount of 2 wire and 2 4-wire inputs that are on the back. And then beneath that, we have a 4x4's rear panel, which is 4 2-wire ports and 4 4-wire ports. Each single control unit supports up to 18 users or radio packs across all of the RF bands that are available, which are 2.4 gig and 900 megahertz. Has an excellent hybrid for converting 2.2 wire to 4-wire, excellent echo cancellation and nulling. The LAN connection all the way over to the right is your connection for using our free software called CrewWare. You can download that on our website right now if you'd like to. Next to that, you have your auxiliary in and out, which are 1/4-inch TRS, TS, balanced or unbalanced audio inputs that can be assigned to any of the conferences within the system. Stage and outs, which is a microphone output for use with many different applications. The CrewNet. And then we have over here, in the middle, you have your 2 and 4-wire connections. Then you have the CrewNet ports here, port number 1 and port number 2. Port number 1 is copper only, RJ45. Once again, our proprietary network. You can't use off-the-shelf products with this device. You have to use our products for this system. And then beneath that is a copper or fiber port, RJ45 termination, or an LC single mode fiber port. Then we have a sync in, which enables you to synchronize multiple CrewCom systems together, a GPO relay above that. On the front, we have headset monitoring capabilities, a comprehensive screen, all of the navigation buttons, as well as the USB ports that enable you to pair the belt packs into the system. A one-time pairing is required, and upload system configurations as needed from a thumb drive or store them that way. The radio transceiver, or what we call an RT, is basically your wireless access point into the CrewNet network. And each one of these units is available in either 2.4 or 900 megahertz. They support 6 belt packs and have the capability of receiving either single mode fiber input or copper RJ45. On single mode, you'll get approximately 10 kilometers. On copper, you'll get 100 meters of distances between devices. You can loop through up to 7 radio transceivers on one specific circuit. And there's no need in a lot of systems for a hub, although we recommend it in a lot of cases, but you can run this system straight from the control unit into 7 radio transceivers or 14 radio transceivers or 16 2.4s and be off to the races. No hub required. It will receive power over CrewNet or PoE or POC. With fiber connections, of course, you'll need to use an external power supply, which is sold separately. The antennas are removable, so you have the option of using other types of directional antennas or tying into a antenna distribution system. There's multiple mounting options available. One has each radio transceiver comes with a mounting plate to go onto a 1/4-20 video threading for standard video tripods, but all the adapters that are available through the third-party companies, as well as our different mounting options, enable you to mount these units in different ways. And each of our devices, everything from our belt packs to our hubs, all have USB connections on them for firmware updates and other applications. Pairing for the radio packs here would be used for your USB. We also offer a 2-knob belt pack and a 4-knob belt pack in both 2.4 and 900 megahertz. They're identical except for the quantity of knobs and controls on each device. A 2-knob belt pack will give that user the access to 2 conferences or party lines. The 4-knob belt packs give that user access to 4 party lines. It's really that simple. They're very small, light, sound good, 7K audio, very, very simple to operate. Excellent comprehensive top-facing LCD screen to give you everything that you need and to monitor while you're doing a job. The assignable function buttons on the top here that are shown at the bottom right can be assigned to stage announce or call, or they could also trigger a GPO relay. You have access to all of the conferences that are on a system. The micro USB is for pairing and for charging and for firmware updates on the radio pack, and it's has an excellent little spring clip on the back of the unit, very simple to use. Our previous one was a little more cumbersome, and we heard a lot of complaints about that and came up with a new clip for the CrewCom system. It'll take either our proprietary lithium polymer battery, or it will operate with AA batteries with no additional sled needed. You can run down to the convenience store around the corner, grab some AA batteries, and be back up and running in the unlikely event that somebody didn't charge the system the night before. Each pack is IP65 rated, so it can't get rained on and get moisture on it, and it's dust resistant. We have a nice drop-in charger that we recently introduced for this unit that charges 6 belt packs and 6 batteries at the same time, hence the 6x6 charger name. It takes about 4 hours to charge all of those devices that are inserted into it, and the LEDs give you an active display as to what's going on and the process and where you're at in that charging time. Our hub, which I referred to before, is an optional device that ships with a power supply, allows you to hook up multiple control units and radio transceivers across the CrewNet network. We have 2 hubs that are available. One's a copper and a fiber port, and the other one, which we refer to as a copper hub, and we have a fiber hub available, which is, for all intents and purposes, the opposite of what the copper hub looks like. You have a single copper input and 8 copper outputs on it. And on the copper hub, you have 8 copper inputs and 1 fiber input. The first one on the fiber hub is either or, as it's noted there on the silk screening on the front of the unit. And the last one on the copper hub is either or, so either copper or fiber out of that port. These can also be reversed and mounted into rack mounts. We have rack mount kits available for them, either 2-side or single side. And you can put the cables into the back of the rack, or you can have them come out the front in a more conventional network application. System, our software is, we just did a CrewWare software seminar last week, which you may want to consider taking a look at. It's available on our website. If you're unable to find it, please contact us. We'll be able to point you in that direction. That goes into the in-depth use of our CrewWare software. And this will give you live monitoring, system development, as well as configuration. And the software that you download from our website for free also contains the firmware. So it's one application that allows you to upgrade all of your hardware to the proper firmware, as well as program the system. And now it's time for me to hand it back to Art Gonzalez, who is going to take another quick poll. Take it away, Art.
Yep. Thanks, Mark. Great job. Before we move on to talking about how you deploy a CrewCom system, at least a basic system, I'm going to do another quick poll. So let me bring that one up, and we will do this quick poll, and then we will jump back into the meat of things. On this one, tell us about the size and use of your facility. And once again, it's check all that apply. So if more than one of these apply to you, go ahead and check that. Is your facility small? In other words, 200 seats or less? Is it a medium-sized facility, anywhere from 200 to 1,000 seats? Is it large? Is it larger than 1,000 seats? And also, curious to know how many people are actually doing things outdoors. We've seen a lot of like drive-in church and things, events outside for House of Worship Market. So just curious to know about that as well. Okay, we'll give you 3 or 4 more seconds, and we will close the poll and share the results. Okay, looks like we've got some responses, so I'm going to close out, and then I am going to share those results. Well, it looks like we've got a lot of people in the medium-sized category, and I got a couple in the large-size category, so that's good to know. We will be talking specifically to all of these categories as we go forward here, and some of the possible solutions for those types of applications. So let me go ahead and hide that, and we will go back to our presentation. And let's go ahead and jump in. Mark did a good job explaining all the different elements of CrewComm. As he mentioned, it is a proprietary network-based system, unlike Microcom, which is all pack-to-pack. There's no need for a base station for that. With CrewComm, really is designed more specifically for probably more larger environments, but also the expandability and flexibility of the system really lends itself well to houses of worship that plan on growing as some are in the future. Hopefully all of them are growing, but we'll allow for that. And this will kind of explain how that works and also give you a little bit in terms of numbers, how many packs, how many transceivers, those types of things. So let's jump right into that. So let's build just a basic CrewComm system. As Mark mentioned, the control unit really is the heart of the system, and that's what establishes this network, what we call CrewNet, which rides on standard Cat5 cable, Cat6 cable, or fiber, depending on your infrastructure. Anyhow, but every system requires one control unit. And by the way, the control unit determines how many packs can operate on your system. So with one control unit, you can have up to 18 packs paired to that control unit. So the other part of the system that you have to have, other than at least one control unit, is a radio transceiver, or what we call an RT. And that's basically the wireless link between the radio packs, the belt packs themselves, and the network. So that's how you get into the network, so to speak. The transceivers or RTs can be either 2.4 or 900 megahertz, as well as you can have a mix of both 2.4 and 900 on the same system if you need to do that. If you get into large, very large systems, we have several applications where we've done that for people doing very large installations. But basically 2.4 and 900 meg. So if you want to add packs to the system, you can do up to 6 radio packs for every transceiver that you have. So in this case, a very simple system. We have a control unit, we have one transceiver connected with Cat5, Cat6, and then we can add 6 packs, and they can all be available in this particular RF space, wherever that transceiver is located. Now, one thing you'll notice here, and Mark did mention, there's 2 types of packs. There's 2 volume packs, or what you may want to call 2 channel packs, or 4 volume packs. The system doesn't care the mix of those. So they can be 2 volume, 4 volume. It's all very flexible on how you want to use it. It could be all 2 volume packs. Really the great thing about the flexibility of CrewComm, another thing, is the ability to use something called a profile. And Mark didn't really get too much into profiles, and we'll talk a little bit about it when we get to the real life examples. But you create a profile to determine what channels show up on the pack and how the pack operates. So it basically decides how the pack operates. So in this case, you can have 2 and 4 volume or 4 volume, 4 channel, however you want to call it, on one system. And you can have up to 6 of those. If you want to add more users, as we talked about the flexibility and being able to add on very easily, it's very simple. As it was pointed out earlier, there is a loop through connection on the transceiver. So I can basically, if I want to add just more users to, let's say, a main area, I can just add another transceiver, and now I can have up to 12 packs in that location. I can actually do that one more time for one control unit. As I mentioned, 18 is the max. And now I can have 18 users, all full duplex, simultaneous, in one location, just by adding transceivers to that location. And those can literally be right next to each other, so that there's no need to space them out a certain amount or anything like that. We even make mounts that put 2 transceivers right next to each other. So we make that pretty easy just to add on. You do have to adjust your configuration file, but with CrewWare, but that's pretty simple to do. Now, let's say you want to try to cover another area of your facility. So you have, let's say, your main stage area, and now you want to go to another part of the building or some facility. In this case, we're connecting with fiber, and then we're connecting up to a hallway that's in another part of the building. The fiber will allow you to connect up to 10 kilometers or 6 miles away. So the other facility could literally be on the other side of town, so to speak, as long as it's less than 10 kilometers away. So anyhow, in this case, you can either roam between those locations, or it will essentially, if it's very far away, it would log out and then log back in once you got to the other location. Or as you'll see in our real world example, you can actually set up the other location to kind of run on its own. So anyhow, the other purpose of the transceivers and adding more transceivers is for extending coverage. So as you can see here, if I want to have the 6 packs that I have as part of my system, and I want them to roam from all my different locations. Another thing I can do, as you saw in the last example, I just had a hub in the other location. But let's say I need to tie into some wired intercom that's in that other facility. I could add another control unit to that system. I can actually add a total of 4 control units. That's the maximum for 72 packs. But in this case, I add a secondary control unit into a multi-purpose room that's in a different building on my campus. I can run a fiber over to that building, or use an existing fiber or an existing Cat5 if it's less than 300 meters. And then I can put that control unit in that area, connect up a hub, add some more transceivers, and that'll allow me now to roam to any of those locations without having to, do anything manually. They'll automatically roam between all those different locations. So that's a good example of that. So with that being said, what we'd like to do right now is, as Gary mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we do have a guest on our webinar. This is our first guest for all of our webinars. And so I'm going to ask David to go ahead and turn on his camera and turn on his mic. And I'll let David talk a little bit more about who he is and what he is. But David is from Grace Church, based out of the St. Louis, Missouri area. And he is the technical manager there, and basically has purchased a CrewComm system. What was it, about a year or so ago now?
It was about 18 months.
Yeah, so a little over a year ago, David had approached us about coming by and doing a demo and so forth. So, and he was very gracious enough to join us on our webinar here. So, David, if you could, I know that I went out there and did the demo and everything went well, and we tied into your wired system and everything. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of what your need was before we came in there? What were you looking for? What kind of problems were you looking to solve?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. We were using a 700 megahertz ClearComm system, which we had 4 belt packs and only 1 worked. So that led us into contacting various companies. And Pliant actually agreed to come out and do a demo. And we were looking for obviously clarity and comfort of the headsets, which they all met those needs actually. And right out of the box, it literally took Art maybe 20 minutes just to get us set up. We've done a live demo, like he said, and for our rehearsal, we put it through its paces. We had the drum kit going, and everything was just falling into place for us.
So you mentioned having the drum kit going and everything. Was that also a deciding factor that it was intelligible even though the environment might be a little bit loud?
Absolutely, yes.
And then can you speak to the fact that one of the things I mentioned real quickly was the profile for the packs? I know you obviously use volunteers in addition to your staff. So what was it about being able to set up the pack for your volunteers that you really liked?
So yeah, we have probably 8 to 10 volunteers. We were able to set up each pack or each profile for their need. Some of them spoke clearly and loudly, so we were able to turn volume down for that particular profile for that person. And we can actually do that remotely or real time using the CrewWare software. So, and if somebody's speaking too quiet, we can turn their volume up, for instance. So it worked out very, very well.
Yeah, so actually I was going to ask you about that. So you can kind of see in the picture, and I'll try to point it out in the background behind David here. Is this where your computer resides most of the time? And,
yeah, actually, I just changed that. The CCU is back there. Our transceiver is on stage. It's about 70 feet away, and it's on copper, of course. And I'm using my laptop. I've got it tied into a VLAN, a wireless VLAN now, so I can, anywhere on campus, I can log in if necessary. I wouldn't do that, but it's an option.
Right, that's great. Yeah, we've got a few customers that are doing that, and they really like that ability. But basically, as you mentioned, your transceiver is on the main stage. Actually, this is a good point. Let me kind of show, this is the layout of Grace Church. And as you can see here, these are the different, and David, I'll let you speak more detail to it. But I think where David, you're talking about is this auditorium area, correct?
Correct, on the left. And it's 2,500, excuse me, seat auditorium. We have a balcony area on a second level. So the transceiver covers that, most of that area, actually does it really well. It disappears as you go to the right into the atrium. And we are now, I think this week we are going to be installing with, let's see, with fiber. We've purchased 1,000 feet of fiber. We're going from one end of the building to the other. In the F building, at the far to the right there where the mouse is. Actually, it says Foundry. It's the E building.
Okay,
And we're going to be pulling that cable this week. We purchased a transceiver and 3 more radio packs, excuse me. And that's going to happen this week.
Great. Yeah, you can call them body packs. I do that all the time. I come from a wireless mic background, so I do that all the time. But yeah, just to kind of to add on to what David just said, you can see here his current setup, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, is this is, if you, hopefully, can you see my mouse, by the way, David, just so?
Yes.
Okay, so if you look over here, this is the stage that he was talking about, and this is kind of represented over here. This is where the transceiver is located on the stage, and he has 6 packs, and you have 2 volume packs. Is that correct? Or all of your packs?
Correct. Yeah, 2 party lines.
Yeah, so he's essentially using 2 party lines. The control unit, I know when we did the initial demo, we did it back here kind of in the front of house position, but I know you just said that it's backstage.
Yep.
And that's tied into, what kind of intercom is it tied into?
It's a ClearCom. It's I don't know the model number, I'm sorry, but it is a 10 channel matrix. It's all manual. It's been there since probably early 2000s.
Oh, you say the early 20s, so like, wow. I was just going to mention, I do remember distinctly when I did the demo, I came out there and I put down my control unit and we plugged an XLR cable into the 2-wire interface.
Yep.
And we have a function on our system, which you can either run from TrueWare or from the control unit itself, called auto null. And that takes into account all the cable resistance, inductance, capacitance, and basically cancels out any noises or echoes in the system. And we have that auto null function. And David and I were discussing this the other day because he said he was hearing a little bit of echo, but he remembered, David, you can maybe jump in, but he said he remembered that he actually moved the control unit.
Yeah, and I didn't do the auto null. I need to do.
Yeah, so when you change the length of the cable, obviously that's going to change the inductance, the resistance, and the capacitance, so you need to do another auto null. So that's just a kind of a nice thing, but actually it works really, really well. As you said, basically in 10 minutes we were up and running. Not only the wireless part of it, we were tied into his party line system very quickly.
Can I add something here? I must say that your I guess the troubleshooting, you can call, you can email, somebody will get back to you. That's another thing that impressed us immensely, was the availability of your tech to answer questions and to work through problems.
Great.
David, you mentioned a moment ago that you tied into a matrix style system about 20 years old. Do you remember if that's the kind with the little sliders on the front, or is it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that would be the Pico. One of the nice things about the CrewCom system is the interface capability, whether it's a 20-year-old Pico, whether it's a brand new Riedel high-tech matrix, whether it's a 40-year-old 2-wire party line system, very easy to interface. And as you said, the auto null to be able to go back and recalibrate because you moved it, really just a couple of button pushes and handled it all for you.
Yeah, that's great. So David, you actually already touched on it a little bit about adding on in the Foundry, and you said you mentioned that you're running the fiber over to the Foundry. And one of the things I just wanted to point out is, David came to us and said that, we want to expand the system, and we just showed you how you can add a transceiver very easily. So basically what happened, to give you a little bit of background, is this is David's original configuration that he sent to me. As you can see, it's just the one control unit, the 2x2 control unit, and then the one transceiver, and that's the one that's on the main stage that we just showed you, and that gives him the 6 packs that are operating there currently. But what he came to me and said is, we want to be able to basically set up in that foundry area, which is way off to the right in that particular diagram that we were showing. And he wanted to add that on there. But in addition, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he said that you may want to put a transceiver in the atrium as well.
Correct, yeah.
And so at some time in the future. So basically what I came back to him with as a solution is I redrew his configuration file, adding a transceiver for the foundry. And we haven't talked in detail about crewware, but you see the connection here. This is, we went from green to purple. This is telling us that this is a fiber connection over to the foundry because of the distances. It was well beyond the 300-meter limit of copper. So he's running a fiber over to the foundry. And then we had mentioned the atrium. So we basically overbuilt the configuration, so to speak, so that in the future, when he wants to add to the atrium, he can just simply plug that in and go. But I know David also came to me and said that he wanted the ability to, if necessary, if he needed more users in the main area, to be able to take that foundry transceiver and bring it over there and add more users to that and use all 9 of his packs, because he added 3 more packs to the system. Is that correct, David?
That is correct, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, and in order to do that, it would be very simple for him to just unplug the one in the foundry and bring it over and come out of the daisy chain, because it's already built into the configuration. And now he can have up to 12 users in that main auditorium location. Now, the other part of that was, I think, David, you wanted to be able to have the foundry kind of operate on their own.
Correct.
So the way we do, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we could do services simultaneously, so in the main auditorium and in the foundry. So we wanted to be able to obviously have 2 separate conferences.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the CrewCom system, is he doesn't have to build an entirely new system just for the foundry. We're going to basically add on to his existing system, but because of the fact that we can build conferences very easily, or channels, we call them conferences because they can be assigned anywhere you need them. And then, I'm sorry, the conferences are over here on the wrong tab. So we created atrium conferences and foundry conferences. So now all he has to do is go to his radio pack profiles, create profiles specifically for those areas. So here I created, just as an example, David's, I took his original profile, which is right here, and I essentially, what I did is I created another one called Banks Foundry, and then on that particular profile, I assigned the foundry conferences. So because of that, now you'll be able to set up the packs that you want to use in the foundry on those particular profiles, and they'll only be speaking on their conferences for the foundry. And then when he wants to bring everything over into the main area, it'd be very simple. He just takes those same packs, the same hardware, and uses the profiles for the main area. So now they just are part of that.
Here's something we haven't touched on, is that the ISO channel, ISO. So it's an isolation channel you can actually set up in the crewware software for each conference. So it doesn't have to be just, on A or B. It can be on both if you really want to do that. But we actually, it works well in our main auditorium for our video team, because we have cameras that move around the stage and the room, so they can actually talk to each other without interrupting the service director or the video director, and they can move around freely with that ISO channel.
Wow, that's a great example of that. I'm always curious to know, because we talk about ISO all the time from a feature standpoint, but it's really cool to hear actually how people really use it. So that's great.
Well, here's a little funny. There's one particular, actually the guy that was in one of the pictures on your PowerPoint, he's one of our video guys. His name's Jake. And sometimes, and it's not very professional, but I'll get on the ISO and I'll start making fun of him. And he starts giggling and the camera starts shaking. But he's not live at that point. I just want to share that little funny.
Yeah, that's glad you're having fun with it. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And David didn't mention it, but the way the ISO works is you essentially push in on the volume button for that particular conference. David, do you have ISOs on both of the conferences set up?
Depends on what profile. Like a stage manager, I would not give them the ISO channel. So that's why the profiles become very useful. I can strip it down for the stage manager that doesn't, know enough about tech, and they think all they need to do is push a button and talk to the service director. That's all we require them to do. But for others who want to get more involved, we can set up the A channel and up the video. They can listen in, but not talk. We can just turn the volume down.
All right, that's great. Hey, I noticed obviously in the pictures you're using our Pliant Smart Boom headsets. Can you tell us which headsets you're using, and are there different ones for different applications? Or are you using all the same one?
We've got one set, the dual ear. That's for the guy who's up in the lift focusing lights because he needs the dual isolation. And then all the 3 or 4 others are single headsets.
Single ear, okay. Yeah, and we're going to talk more about headsets here shortly. But yeah, we do have the Smart Boom headsets that the microphone, if the user flips the microphone up, it mutes the mic. So it's good if you need to have a private conversation or something. It's a good, safe way to make sure that your mic is actually muted. Now, on your packs, are you using momentary for most of the packs, or latching, or a mix?
Well, a little mix. Again, I can set up profiles for, again, the guy up in the lift, he doesn't want to have a latch because he can leave it on while he's focusing. So we give him momentary. And that's basically it. We can set it up for each person for whatever they need.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And do I understand that you, with your volunteers, I noticed you have a lot of profiles over here on the left. And so you obviously try to set them up based on the actual volunteer to kind of customize it for that particular.
Yeah, it gives them, they see their name on the LCD screen. Like, oh, this is cool,
Right.
Other than that, they're just basically clones of the first one with, adjustments for their needs.
Right. Okay. So little tweaks here and there for each one. Gotcha. Okay. Well, David, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Tell us about any other funny anecdotes?
Yeah, I'm the funny guy. No, I think we covered everything. Obviously,
great.
Thank you for tuning in. And not really good at this, but I gave it my best shot.
Oh, you did great. Yeah, I don't know, for your first time on a webinar, if that's the case, you did a great job.
And you gave us a brand new application. We're going to have to expand our notes into having fun with ISO.
Here's one thing. I thought about getting a 4-channel radio pack and setting up 2 buttons for momentary and 2 buttons for latch, because you'd have to change profiles to move from latch to momentary. So there's an idea.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing you could do with just to kind of put an idea in your head is with a 4-volume pack, if you ever wanted to communicate with both the foundry and the main area, you could have a conference that's common to everybody. And you could actually, at the same time while they're going at the same time, you could communicate with both facilities at the same time.
Well, you did ask me the reason for doing for this upgrade in the foundry. What led us to this was COVID, actually, and streaming.
Oh.
So even though it's only a 300-seat auditorium, it's a multi-purpose room, and it's going to be basically just for one conference only for video, so they can roam around the room. Obviously, wirelessly, we have wireless cameras and stuff like that. So it just this is what led to this, was the need for streaming and in this particular space.
Sure. One of the things we see now with COVID and the need for social distancing, that even the smaller houses of worship, where they might normally have gone up to somebody who they would work with in a production and just kind of whisper in their ear, not necessarily desirable in today's in today's situation. So being able to have an intercom where you can actually speak clearly and intelligibly into a comm and not have to yell to somebody across the stage really is helping a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Okay, I do. We haven't had any questions come up, which means you guys have presented well. If there is anybody who would like to ask a question of ourselves or David, if you'd like to raise your hand, we'll be happy to unmute your microphone.
let's see here. Let's see, on the attendee side, doesn't look like there's any hands going up.
Yeah.
All right, well, we will have time at the end, as we mentioned before. So if you happen to think of anything, of course, type it in at any time, and then we'll leave some time at the end as well. So David, once again, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate your insights and, of course, everything you do for us. So much
Thank you very
appreciated.
much. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
All right. See you later.
Okay.
So let's continue on. The next section, actually, Mark is going to cover. We're going to jump into the Pliant headset. So Mark, I am going to hand it back to you. We've got headsets left, and then we're going to talk applications, and then we'll be done. So just kind of give everybody where we are. So Mark, take it away.
Thank you very much, Art, and thank you all for sticking around. So we're going to go over all of the professional headsets that are available for all of our products, Microcom, XRM, and CrewCom. And here we have the picture of the entire family sitting in front of you, the specialty headsets down below and the Pliant Smart Boom headsets above. So next slide is what this slide is here to talk to us about is, first off, all of our 3 models of the SB11, 110, and 210 have a nice feature called Smart Boom, where the boom microphone, when it is set to approximately the 12 o'clock position on your headset, it will shut off the microphone. And when you pull it down in front of your mouth, it will turn back on and become active again. So if you're using a latched conference or a latched belt pack, such as either of the XR or the M, you have the ability to go off of microphone very discreetly and very cleanly with simply moving the headset out of your way, out of your mouth. All of our headsets in the Smart Boom are available with either a dynamic microphone, an electric condenser microphone. They are terminated with either 4-pin female XLR, which is what our belt packs and CrewCom terminate to, or 5-pin male XLR, which a lot of legacy products and other camera backs terminate to. Or you can order our headsets with unterminated pigtailed cabling, which will enable you to terminate it however you would like to try to terminate it, or interface it to whatever. And then, of course, all of these headsets, in addition to the specialty headsets I'll be showing you in later slides, are available with 3.5 millimeter jacks on them. In this particular case, the Smart Booms come with dual 3.5 millimeter connections to plug into the Microcom belt packs. The Smart Boom headsets are also collapsible. There's a little picture over to the left there that we didn't really talk much about, but each of the headsets can be collapsed onto itself, so it's easier to pack when you're getting done with the gig. Our specialty headsets are very applicable to today's presentation, because in a lot of cases at a house of worship or at certain facilities, you don't want to have a large headset on a user. It may be distracting or alarming to the attendee of the service. So we offer a couple of nice discrete headsets that take that entire form factor and shrink it down to enable you to be almost invisible. An example of the lavalier and earpiece to the left there, it's got the very clear curly Q earbud on it that hides behind your ear, much like a Secret Service guy and a lavalier microphone. So literally there's no indication that you're wearing any kind of headset at all. And then there's a jobber style, I like to call it, the in-ear boom headset here to the left, which is an excellent solution for a lot of cases where you don't want to have a headset visible, or you actually may find this more comfortable to work with on a long work day. And now I'm going to be handing this back over to Art, who is going to then help sliding.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, we're going to actually, now that we know about all the different products, all the different headsets and everything, let's talk about choosing the right solution for your house of worship. So we're, as we talked about earlier, we're going to talk about small, medium, large facilities. But first of all, let's back up a little bit and talk about some of the needs for a house of worship. Obviously, as we talked with David, a lot of the facilities, if not all of them, are at least partially volunteer-based. So there's a lot of non-technical users out there. So we want to kind of keep things as simple as possible. Even our CrewCom system, which as you saw can be very flexible, very customizable, and still the belt pack itself is very easy to use. So it has to be very volunteer friendly and very simple to use. And that's certainly true with Microcom and even true with CrewCom. The other part of it is the versatility. As also, when you saw in David's example, he started out with a fairly small system, but he also wanted to grow as the church needs grew. In his case, it was because of COVID and doing online. But the versatility of system is very important. Our Microcom system, Microcom M and Microcom XR, all have the ability to grow. You can add more packs very easily. In the case of Microcom, you don't have to buy a specific kind of pack or anything. You just add another pack to the system, whether it's listen only, shared in the case of XR. Very easy to do, very versatile. The other thing, as Mark just mentioned, with all the different headset options, we feel we're one of the only manufacturers, if not the only manufacturer, that offers such an array of headsets for different applications. Because we know every application is different. Depending on how loud the environment is, whether you're indoors, outdoors, it all changes, and we have the ability to plug pretty much in any type of headset for any different type of application. The other thing we found is portability. So for different locations, let's say you have a multi-campus church and you need to move, you don't have a huge budget, but you want to, maybe use your main campus and then take the system over to another campus, whatever. Portability may be a thing, especially with Microcom, that makes a lot of sense. Or let's say you're just starting out your church and you're in a temporary location like a movie theater or a school or something like that, and knowing eventually, or while your church is being built, you'll be able to take your communication system with you into your new facility, especially with Microcom, and make the setup very, very easy. You basically can move it and turn everything on, and it's going to operate just like it did in the past facility. And of course, budget is something to consider. And actually, that takes us into our next slide. We haven't really talked about price or what, where each of the products sits in that standpoint. So this will give you an idea, a lot of information to digest. But essentially, based on your budget and your application, this kind of gives you an idea. And these are all, by the way, US list prices. And they're also based on a one pack and one headset. And it's an average cost. Yes, Mark, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I wanted to take this opportunity while we have this slide up to kind of give the audience a visual of the different sizes between the belt packs here. So as you can see, I've got the Microcom M, the XR, and then the CrewCom belt pack, the 4-knob version right there next to each other. And just to give you a little size comparison in person, see what they look like.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, as you can see here, and as Mark showed, that there's 3 different types of packs: the M, the XR, and of course the CrewCom. The pricing that you're seeing here is US list price, and also is based on having one headset. And we just took an average cost of a headset because we have so many. We have everything from a $99 in-ear headset to all the way up to a $350 dual Smart Boom Pro US list price. The other things to consider is not only, of course, price, which is important because you're probably on a limited budget, but as you can see, a per user cost is quite different between Microcom and CrewCom. Of course, when you move up to the CrewCom product, as we've shown, it's a network-based system, and it gives you a lot more coverage overall. Another thing to keep in mind is as the CrewCom system grows, actually the per user cost goes down because you don't have to buy more base stations or control units, as we call it, every time you add more users. You can just buy another transceiver in the case of adding on more users. So kind of keep that in mind. Also, things to consider are the number of channels. If you remember, Microcom M is a single channel system. Microcom XR is a dual A or B selecting between channels, and CrewCom can be up to a 4-channel system where those conferences can be assigned, but all of them can be listened to simultaneously. So it really depends on your workflow there for your particular application. Yes, Gary.
One of the things I'd like to add in here, one of the attributes of our system is it's very difficult to understand what the sound properties of a device are like if you're looking at specifications. One of the things that's unique to all three of these devices is they all have an extremely good dynamic range. And what that means is it doesn't translate to fidelity or frequency. What it translates is the ability to operate in a noisy environment. And all three of these devices have excellent dynamic range, which means if you try to use them in a very noisy environment, you will still be able to talk, you'll still be able to listen. The other people that you're communicating with will also be able to hear you clearly. And that's one of the things that, unfortunately, it's difficult to put into a spec for people to understand, but it's an extremely important issue if you're in an environment that is noisy. And that could be anything from an outdoor event to having to have somebody on a stage next to a live band.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good point. Other things to consider when looking at the three systems is range. Mark showed you some of the average ranges that we get, and I'll show you some facilities and talk a little bit more about range. In the US, we do sell a 900 megahertz product, which is not in the same band as any, well, majority of wireless microphone products. Those are typically UHF based, so you don't have to worry about coordinating frequencies with wireless mics or anything. And then outside of the US, 2.4 is the go-to, and same thing there. I just have to be considerate of the fact that it is using the same band as Wi-Fi, but it's not a Wi-Fi product. So those are some of the considerations. So let's look at some use cases. In a small church, in this case, I basically went online and pulled down some designs for kind of churches. And as you can see here, I don't know if you can see the dimensions, but this is a fairly small church, about a 200 seat or less style church. You can see the overall building dimensions are 113 by 78 approximately feet. So not a huge facility. But if you think about the fact of like a microcom system, it's a fairly small church, so you don't need a large coverage area. And in terms of range, I don't think we would have any problem whatsoever covering the main sanctuary portion of this particular facility. Should be no problems whatsoever. If you wanted to cover, the other parts of the facility, it really depends on the construction, whether it's steel or wood or whatever. Obviously RF. You have to take into considering what type of metal structure it is, if it's a metal building with a metal roof, so on and so forth. Those are all very specific to the building. But that's part of the things to consider. Also, where do you want your packs to operate? In this case, we're just talking about three packs, and we're using it for 2 cameras, stationary cameras, and maybe a lead tech who's walking around or so forth. Going back to Mark's point about the master pack placement, in this particular example, I would actually make one of the camera operators the master, because they're a stationary camera. So during the service, they're not going to be moving around. So as long as your lead tech is within range of that beacon that we talked about, should be no issues whatsoever. I think should be no problem with either 2.4 or 900 in this particular environment. And also take into consideration the number of channels. In this case, it's just a single channel. So they're all talking on the same party line. And doing full duplex communications with no issues. So that's a small. If you look at a medium-sized application, in this case, I'm showing XR packs. Doesn't necessarily have to be XR packs. It could be M packs if you want. But as I mentioned, one of the things to consider is the number of channels. So let's say in this particular environment, they maybe need 2 channels, one for camera and one just for production. So anyhow, so things to consider: the size of the facility, of course, is very important. XR is going to give you a little more range, so if the size is a little bit larger, XR may help with that. As if you remember, we have 2 modes of operation: a 10-user mode and a 5-user mode. So when you get into that 5-user mode, you're going to get a little more range, about 25% more. And once again, the environment, of course, makes a difference. What RF band, wired connectivity. We talked about tying into a wired connection on the CrewCom system. We haven't showed anything or talked anything about XR being able to tie into a wired system, but that is something that we're working on. We just don't have it available yet, but that is something that we're working on for Microcom XR. And then finally, a large house of worship, and this would be the case of something similar to what David at Grace Church talked about. Anything larger than 1,000 seats, more than 40,000 square feet. there's a lot more things to consider. You can consider where all your packs are going to operate, how many different conferences or channels that you need to operate, whether it's up to 2 or up to 4. And then also the consideration of the fact, just like with Grace Church, where they're adding on another transceiver, they may have a multi-purpose room where there's a second production going on either simultaneously or different parts of or different times during the day. The other thing you could consider, in this case, I've added ushers out in the foyer, and they could be talking to parking lot attendants. So one of the functions that we can do with CrewComm is we have the ability to interface with standard two-way radio interfaces, or we don't make the actual interface between, let's say, the 2-wire and a two-way radio interface, but we do have the ability to do that, where we actually have a function called call on talk. So when, let's say, an usher presses a talk button and he wants to talk to somebody on the two-way radio in the parking lot, essentially that triggers that two-way radio interface and then basically connects him up to the two-way radios to the guys out in the parking lot. So a lot more flexibility from the CrewComm system for that. In addition to that, the coverage area is much greater depending on the number of transceivers that you have. So you may, in this case, want to put a transceiver in the main sanctuary, one in the multi-purpose area, maybe even one out in the foyer for your ushers, or even back in the classroom area if you needed something going on back in there. So you can much more flexible in terms of being able to determine coverage area. So that's a large house of worship. So with that, that kind of gives us an idea of where each one of the product lines would fit in. As you can see, there's crossover between them for different applications. It really depends. Of course, we can help you with that. So you can reach out to us at any time and help you determine what works best for your facility. So with that, we'll open it up for the final questions. This is your last chance to ask questions. So we'll get Mark and Gary back on the line here. You can either raise your hand with the raise your hand button, or if you want to type in the question, you can. If you're too shy, you can always send us an email, get on our website. We have a web chat on the website. And I'll mention again also that all of the webinars that we're doing, including this one, are being recorded. And they'll be, you should get an email at the end of the webinar that with a link to all of our webinars and all the recordings. So Gary, did you have anything additional?
Just as always, if anybody has an application that they're trying to figure out exactly what is the right solution, please reach out to any of the three of us. We're always here and happy to help. But I think
we didn't mention real quick. We didn't mention the handouts. There are some handouts that you have access to. This particular PowerPoint is on there. It's in PDF form, and it does include the links like this one where you can go to the webinars. Then there's also a CrewComm brochure and Microcom brochures as well, in addition to that, as well as a headset brochure.
Okay. I don't see any additional questions, so I guess we're good. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, especially our international friends. And we hope to see you on our next seminar.
Great. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.